There's a part of you that feels there's a part of me that, yeah, still feels that. I've got something to do, or I didn't do something, or... Evan Mabe, the Bond thing. James Brolin has always been known for his strength, both on screen and in his personal life. But now something deeply personal has shaken him to the core. News of his wife's tragic diagnosis has left fans heartbroken and wondering how the couple will face this painful chapter together. For years, they've been admired as one of Hollywood's most lasting love stories. But this momentous testing, even their rock-solid bond. What could have brought them to such an emotional crossroad? Join us as we uncover why James Brolin is saying goodbye after his wife's tragic diagnosis behind the lights. James Brolin has spent decades under bright lights, moving easily between Hollywood sets and red carpets. But these days, at home, medical bills have become part office and Barbra Streisand's daily reality. He's balancing his own health needs with mounting costs tied to his wife's treatment. She, in turn, is dealing with her own health battles, saving hair energy for what matters most. Those who have worked with James notice the subtle shift in his priorities. Acting projects are fewer. Public appearance, rare. His focus is on home and on being present. But before we explore this moment in his life, it's worth stepping back. James Brolin's story isn't only about his marriage to one of the world's most celebrated performers. It's also a booth boy he once was, the obstacles he overcome, and the transformation that shaped a man now facing one of life's hardest chapters. The man who, before any fame or fortune, knew what it was like to struggle for breath and to feel like the odd one out. And here is where his journey truly began. James Brolin was born Craig Kenneth Ruderlin on July 18, 1940, in Westwood, Los Angeles. His father, Henry Brolin, was a building contractor who approached work with a strict nonsense discipline. That work ethic left a mark on young Craig. Though Henry's hours on the job often meant his presence at home was limited. His mother, Helen Sue, managed the household with dedication. She had her own dreams once, ambitions set aside to raise her family. Those unspoken sacrifices lingered in the background, a reminder that life often forced choices before you were ready. Childhood for Craig was far from carefree. He suffered from severisme, the kind that left him sidelined from sports and wary of playground dust. While other boys ran across fields or climbed trees, he spent long hours indoors, breathing through wheezes and waiting for the tightness in his chest to ease. The isolation could have been crushing, but it shaped a different kind of curiosity. He began building detailed model airplanes, studying the way parts fit together. Films also captured his attention, not just for the stories but for the mechanics behind them. The cameras, the angles, and the way light told as much of the story as the actors did. That fascination grew, and by that time he was a teenager. He had a small collection of filmmaking tools, gifts from family or found at second-hand shops. These became his playground. He would experiment with framing and light, sometimes talking friends into acting out scenes just so he could practice. School felt like two different worlds. On the surface, Craig was shy, almost withdrawn, and careful not to draw too much attention. Yet, something began to shift when he entered Santa Monica City College, surrounded by people chasing their own dreams. He felt a spark. That spark became a flame when he moved on to University of California, Los Angeles drama program. There he discovered that performing wasn't just about standing in front of an audience. It was about understanding people, living their emotions, and making a story feel real. The boy who once kept to the shadows was learning to stand in the light. Like many actors of his generation, James Brolin's career began with a string of small, almost forgettable appearances. In the early 1960s, he took wait for work he could find, including walk-on roles in shows like Bus Stop. The pay was modest. The exposure limited, but every set was a classroom. Each role, no matter how brief, was another lesson in camera, presence, and timing. Yet, it wasn't glamorous. He faced more ejections than callbacks. And there were weeks when he wondered if he'd chosen the wrong path entirely. Rent and groceries. Competed with acting classes for the little money he had. And there were times when financial strain made quitting seem like the logical choice. The turning point came in 1969 when he was cast as Dr. Stephen Kiley in medical drama Marcus Welby. MD Thurl fit him perfectly. A huge idealistic physician whose compassion matched his competence. Viewers connected with him instantly, and critics took notice. Over the show's 7-year run, Brolin earned 1 Emmy Award and 2 Golden Globe Awards. For an actor who had stood on the edge of giving up, this was a launching pad. With fame cameo opportunities, the 1970s saw him take on leading role-scene high-profile projects. In Hotel, he became the face of elegance and authority as the general manager overseeing a grand San Francisco stylish team. In Westworld, he ventured into science fiction, holding his own alongside Yul Brynner in a story that would later inspire a major HBO series. He went on to headline Capricorn 1, a tense conspiracy thriller about a fake Mars landing and the Amityville Horror. On-off, the era's most lasting horror films. Each role showed a different side of his range, proving he could move smoothly from drama to action to suspense. Brolin's curiosity didn't stop at acting. As the years went on, he began directing and producing, learning the logistics of storytelling from the other side of the camera. That shift gave him control over the projects he took on and allowed him to mentor emerging talent. Something he took seriously after his own early struggles. Remarkably, his relevance didn't fade with time. In the 2000s and 2010s, Brolin reached new audiences through television hits like Life in Pieces, where his comedic timing delighted viewers, and through voice work, such as She's role in Pixar's Lightyear. Longevity in Hollywood is rare. But his career has spanned more than 6 decades, each chapter adding new depth to his public image. Still, as the years passed, the story of James Brolin became less about career milestones and more about the life he was building away from the cameras. This brings us to the question: how did his path lead him to Barbra Streisand? A life of passion and purpose. Barbra Joan Streisand entered the world on April 24, 1942 in Brooklyn, New York, at a time when the United States was still deep in the troubles of World War II. Her early life was marked by a loss that would shape her emotional landscape forever when she was just 15 months old. Her father, Emanuel Streisand, died sudden life from complications following a seizure. He had been a respected high school teacher, a man who valued education and culture, and his absence left more than just an empty chair at the dinner table. It left a gap Barbra would feel for the rest of her life. A wound that made her crave connection and validation in ways would later channel into her art. Her mother, Diana, was thrown into the role of a single parent almost overnight. Grief changed her. Practicality became a servile tool, but it came at the expense of tenderness. Diana's approach to life was practical, almost businesslike. And while she worked to keep the family afloat, her emotional distance left Barbra yearning for warmth. In her eyes, Diana could be critical and unsupportive, quick to point out flaws rather than celebrate events. That relationship would remain complicated. Even as Barbra achieved second of fame her mother could never have imagined. When Barbra was still ocult, Diana remarried. Her stepfather Louis Kind became part of the household, but the bond was never an easy one. The connection between them lacked genuine affection, and at times it created more strain than comfort. For Barbra, home was not always a place of refuge. Instead, she often found herself retreating into her imagination, using music and make-believe as an escape from the tensions that simmered behind closed doors. Financially, the family lived in modest conditions. There was no glamour, no luxury, just the day-to-day reality of making ends meet. Clothes were worn until they frayed, and small treats were rare. This upbringing instilled in Barbra a hunger to prove herself, but it also fed into a feeling she carried throughout her teenage years. That she was somehow on the outside looking in. She was aware of her differences, whether it was her looks, her voice, or her ambitions. And that awareness made her both self-conscious and fiercely determined. Music became a refuge early on. As a young girl, she would imitate the voices of singers, admired testing the boundaries of her own vocal range. She absorbed the phrasing, the emotion, the technical control without formal training. By her teenage years, she had developed a sound that was unmistakable, rich, expressive, and entirely her own. Still, she wasn't a type of performer who relied only on a pretty voice. She had presence and intensity that made it impossible to look away once she began to sing. In school, she was not the popular girl. She didn't fit into the easy social groups, but she carried herself with a sense of destiny. Friends and teachers who paid attention could see that she had something unusual, something raw and magnetic. What Barbra lacked in social standing, she made up for in ambition. She began dreaming of Broadway, of film, of standing in front of an audience that would see her for who she was and not for what she lacked. The combination of fearly loss, complex family situations, and modest beginnings forged a personality that was both tough and sensitive. Those early experiences shaped the way she approached her career and her relationships, instilling in her a belief that she had to fight for every opportunity. And when James Brolin eventually entered her life decades later, he would come to see that behind global icon was still the Brooklyn girl who had grown up needing to prove she belonged. But before they found each other, Barbra's own climb to the top would be just as remarkable. How did a girl from Brooklyn with no industry connections and no financial backing become one of the most celebrated voices in the world? Barbra's career didn't so much take off as it blasted into orbit. By the time she was a teenager, her determination to escape the narrow streets of Brooklyn had taken real shape. She began entering talent contests across New York, often showing up in simple clothes with no fancy styling. But the moment she opened her mouth to sing, the room would go still. She had that rare gift of making even a noisy nightclub feel intimate. Her voice was textured, emotional, and unpredictable in a way that made every performance feel new. Her earliest jobs came in small clubs and cabarets where audiences were a mix of regulars, music lovers, and curious lookers who had heard whispers about a young woman who could stop you in your tracks. It didn't take long for industry professions to start noticing. Casting directors and producers began to turn up, drawn by stories of a voice that could handle ballads and big brassy showstoppers with equal mastery. That true breakthrough came in 1962 when Shellen did her Broadway debut in I Can Get It For You Wholesale. Though she was just 19 years old, her performance as Miss Marmalstein, a quirky and sharp-witted secretary, became the standout of the show. Audiences couldn't get enough, and critics quickly began writing about the newcomer who could command the stage without fitting the traditional mold of a Broadway beauty. Her combination of humor, vulnerability, and vocal prowess made her impossible to ignore. Then came Funny Girl, first on stage in 1964 and later in the 1968 film adaptation. Barbra embodied the role of Fanny Brice so completely that it washed to separate the character from the performer. She brought Fanny's conditioning and emotional depth to life, while delivering songs like People and Don't Train on My Parade in ways that would become definitive. For the film version, she won the Academy Award for Best Actress, an achievement that sealed her place as a bona fide Hollywood star. From there, Barbra moved effortlessly in music and film, something few performers have done with such dominance. Her albums consistently leapt the charts, earning her multiple Grammy Awards. while her film career brought more Oscars, Golden Globes, and critical acclaim. She wasn't content, Tobe, just a performer though. She began taking an active role behind the scenes, influencing everything from set design to costume choices, and later directing and producing her own projects. This was where her reputation for perfectionism truly solidified. Colleagues sometimes found her exacting, but it was never without purpose. She believed in her vision completely and refused to settle for anything less than what she thought was right. That creative control, rare for women in Hollywood at the time, gave her a career longevity that outlasted many of her peers. By the time she met James Brolin in the late 1990s, Barbra wasn't just Astor. She was an institution. Her life had been defined by drive, reinvention, and an uncompromising standard for excellence. And yet, for all her public triumphs, her personal life had been far less certain. Keep watching. There's more. A bond of devotion. When James Brolin and Barbra Streisand first crossed paths in 1996, it wasn't at some glittering Hollywood gala or through the cows of a film set. It was a blind date set up by mutual friends. Both were successful. Both had been through marriages before, and both were skeptical about the idea of being set up. Yet, when James arrived, any hesitation seemed to fade. Barbra later admitted she was instantly struck by his warm, grounded presence, and James was equally taken with her weakened, unfiltered honesty. What could have been an awkward evening quickly became an hours-long conversation. That night revealed the surprising truth that, despite coming from largely different backgrounds, they shared values that ran deeper than the surface. Both cared about their craft, guarded their private lives fiercely, and believed in hard work over shortcuts. From there, their relationship unfolds without the whirlwind pace you might expect from two celebrities. They took their time, blending their lives slowly, making sure that what they were building was real and sustainable. Friends noted that James brought a sense of steadiness into Barbra's life while she encouraged him to embrace new opportunities and creative risks. 2 years later, on July 1, 1998, they married in an intimate ceremony at Barbra's Malibu estate. The wedding was attended by close friends and familiar rather than an army of industry insiders. The focus was not on spectacle, but on their commitment to each other. Barbra walked down the aisle with a radiant smile, while James, often known for his composed demeanor, couldn't hide the joy on his face. It was a union built not on the buzz of Hollywood, but on trust and affection. Life together wasn't without its challenges. Both had demanding careers, and finding the balance between public life and private time was a constant effort. Barbra continued to perform, record, and occasionally direct, while James took on film and television roles, including long-running parts that kept them busy for months at a time. Yet, they made it work, often retreating to their home to recharge between projects. Friends described their house as a peaceful space filled with laughter, good food, and the occasional spirited debate over politics or art. Mutual support became a defining feature of their marriage. When Barbra faced periods of vocal strain and other health concerns, James was by her side, making sure she rested, shielding her from unnecessary stress and even making small festal adjustments to help her recover. Likewise, when James encountered his own personal and professional challenges later in life, Barbra offered encouragement. She was a sounding board, his critic when he needed one, and his champion when through old seemed indifferent. Through each all, they maintained a rare sense of partnership. They were invested in each other's well-being and growth, even after decades together. They spoke of each other with genuine admiration. James would praise Barbra's relentless drive and artistry, while she would credit him with bringing a calm steadiness that allowed her to slow down when necessary. Yet, as the years went in, life began to present them with a new set of challenges that tested even these strongest bonds. In an industry where relationships often flicker and fade under the relentless heat of public attention, James Brolin and Barbra Streisand became something of an anomaly. They were not the couple constantly courting headlines or feeding media with carefully staged glimpses into their lives. Instead, their approach felt almost old-fashioned. Built on the idea that marriage should be a sanctuary, a place protected from the noise of Hollywood. This earned them the kind of respect that cannot be manufactured. Fans and peers often pointed to them as proof that love could survive and even thrive in the entertainment world. While many celebrity couples stumbled over conflicting schedules, competing egos, or the temptations that come with constant attention, James and Barbra appeared to escape those pitfalls with Rick's solid loyalty. The tabloids, famously unforgiving, rarely had any genuine scandal to print about them. Writers might speculate on career moves or wardrobe choices, but heart of their relationship remained untouched by public drama. That absence of scandal became part of their legend and was in itself a statement. They were not without critics. Barbra's perfection sometimes made her a target for unflattering portrayals. James occasionally faced the perception of being Mr. Streisand, and the shadow offered towering fame. Yet neither seemed willing to let public opinion dictate terms of their life together. They appeared at industry events as a united front, their subtle gestures toward each other speaking volumes without a single word. Their shared influence extended far beyond the stage and the screen. Both had long histories of philanthropy for they met. And together, they amplified that work in ways that touched countless lives. They contributed to causes ranging from environmental practice to medical research. From arts education to social justice initiatives, Barbra's passion for gender equality and health advocacy often found James Bihar side at charity galas or behind the scenes helping to organize fundraising. Likewise, James' support for veterans and local community projects often included Barbra lending her voice, her platform, or her presence to strengthen the cause. The legacy they leave as a couple is as much about how they live together as it is about what they achieved individually in Hollywood. The term power couple is often tied to red carpet appearances, combined net worth, or professional collaborations. James and Barbra reshaped that identity. For them, real power came from stability, mutual trust, and a shared ability to use their influence for meaningful purposes. It came from weathering personal storms without broadcasting every detail and from celebrating their victories privately bore, sharing them with the world. Also, their story has carried a rare kind of consistency. Decades after they met, the same qualities that defined the early years of their relationship remain in place. Those qualities have allowed them to serve the ups and downs of life in the public eye with grace. Even now, as they face perhaps the most difficult chapter of their lives, the public perception of them remains mixed with admiration for their strength. Fans watch closely out of genuine concern and affection, thoughts built over decades. Many have followed them through their careers, marriages, and personal milestones. And they see this current struggle as a human challenge faced by two people they have come to care about. It is rare for a celebrity couple to inspire both the industry and the audience in equal measure. Yet James and Barbra haven't managed exactly that, though their example speaks to the possibility of love lasting in a business known for short-lived relationships and to the strength that comes from building a life rooted in shared values. For them, fame was never the foundation. Fame was simply a circumstance. The real foundation was the bond they nurtured in private away from the cameras. As James now stands by Barbra during her health battle, the image of the two of them together, still hand in hand after all these years, carries a weight far beyond Hollywood legend. It speaks to the truth they have lived all along. The greatest role either of them has ever played is the one they play in each other's lives. OUTRO. What do you think? After all these years, does James Brolin and Barbra Streisand's lasting bond prove that love can truly outshine fame? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them.